Hello, and welcome to Horrors Revealed. Today, we're diving into the heart of the wilderness with 3 spine-chilling encounters experienced by outdoorsmen in the woods. Get ready to be on the edge of your seat as we explore these terrifying tales. Don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling content. I was in my early teens and both my parents worked at night, so I'd often be sent to my grandmother's acreage out in the country after school or on weekends. There was absolutely nothing to do there, unless I wanted to watch TV or play solitaire on her ancient PC. So naturally, I spent a lot of time outside, exploring 10 acres of unmanaged woodland. As long as I was inside in the dark, I wouldn't get into any trouble. So one autumn evening, as I'm heading back to the house a bit later than I should be, I can't see all that well, but I hear something snap out of time with my own footfalls. The light is fading fast, and what light there is directly in my eyes as I whip around to see what made that noise. I can catch a glimpse of something canine, a coyote, my brain said. I was not a big threat to most, but I was a late bloomer and a small kid. I can't bear the sun right in my face, so I continue walking home, taking careful note of the sounds around me and stopping to confront whatever was behind me whenever it sounded like it was coming closer. Eventually, the light fades, and I still haven't gotten a proper look at this thing, but I can see the lights of Grandma's house through the trees. At this point, I'm thoroughly worried because I can barely see my own feet, and I'm still being followed with only a large stick in my hands and no light, because I was a dumb kid who couldn't manage time and thought my grandma's property was safe. I finally break the tree line and am greeted with light, but nothing follows me out. My curiosity is battling my fear, but eventually common sense gets the better of me and persuades me to go inside rather than back closer to the woods. I get inside and get a brief admonition from my grandma before she tells me to take the dogs out before dinner. After not getting a word in edgewise, I take the dogs, a chihuahua and a dachshund, so not really dogs, a fake, into the fenced portion of the yard and wait for a while they explore their domain. This time I do have a light with me, because both are usually reluctant to go back inside and will hide, so sometimes I need to find them. I get tired of standing around outside, and the Duchess is nowhere to be seen. I last saw her going around the house toward the back, toward the woods. At this point, I've forgotten all about my stalker from earlier, and figure that she, the dachshund, is digging yet another hole in an attempt to burrow under the fence. So I go round back to retrieve the dog, and she's just staring through the fence, very tense. She growls as I approach, which sets me off. The Duchess never growls. I sweep my light out back and catch a glimmer as I pass over something, so I go back to it and change the beam to a smaller focus. Standing about 30 yards from the fence are 2 gray wolves, completely motionless. Now, I've raised wolf dogs. I know the difference between wolves and dogs. These are big, huge. These are not dogs. I quickly pick the Duchess up and keep my light shining on the wolves as I back towards the side of the house. As soon as I round the corner, I turn around and book it straight for the door, and I burst in out of breath, and my grandma says I'm white as a sheet. I tell her what I saw, and she calls it bullshit, blaming my overactive imagination and saying I'm a drama queen, which as a young man I found quite offensive. And it doesn't matter anyway because nobody is going outside anymore tonight. In the morning, I pester my mum when she comes to get me, and she believes much the same as my grandma, but homers me by going with me to check the area. Sure enough, in softer patches of soil, we see canid prints. Way too big to be a dog. From then on, I was forbidden from wandering the woods. The Forest Service's official statement is that there are no wolves where I live. But I know better, and am glad I don't have much reason to go out into the country in my adult life. I can still feel the strange mix of emotions from that day. Fear, curiosity, confusion. A strange mix of awe and terror. Just one more time in my life, I was incredibly lucky to survive. When I was a teenager, I went on a hitchhiking trip around Europe. On around day 10, I remember waking up and thinking back on my trip so far and thinking to myself, this is so much fun. We made it so much further than I'd ever imagined, and we have had no problems at all. The rest of the day was filled with some uncomfortable situations, and I seriously felt I had jinxed ourselves. We found ourselves outside of Nottingham, in a pretty fancy and busy rest stop gas station area. We had it in our minds that we wanted to go to Sherwood Forest, where Robin Hood used to roam, knowing fully well that he is more of a legend than a real historic character. The funny thing is that the cars that stopped for us as we were hitchhiking did not know where Sherwood Forest was. It was almost like they had never heard of it. We waited for a few hours and started thinking we might camp at the rest stop, which was busy and probably not very safe. We had a rule that we would stop hitchhiking when it got dark, but on this day, with the allure of Sherwood Forest in our mind, we decided to keep trying even after it was dark. Suddenly, a man in his 30s pulled over in a dark sedan and asked us where we were going. We explained we wanted to go to the Sherwood Forest, and he said, "I have no idea where that is, but I will get you there." We had another rule: never put our backpacks in the car's trunk because we wanted to be able to run away if we had to. The guy popped open the trunk, and in pure desperation, we broke our rule and threw our backpacks in there. I, as the male, jumped in the passenger seat, and my female friend got in the back seat. We exchanged pleasantries for a bit, and then he turns and looks at me and asks, "I don't know where Sherwood Forest is, and it is getting late. Why don't we go back to my place and you two can sleep there? Tomorrow morning I'll figure out where Sherwood Forest is and take you there." I look in the rear mirror and see my friend, with a worried look, slowly shaking her head. I tell the man, "I appreciate it, but we really want to sleep in the Sherwood Forest tonight." And he responds, "No problem at all." He drives in silence, probably for about 5-7 minutes, and then he looks at me and says, "So, you guys have been traveling for a bit, huh? It's probably difficult to eat a proper meal on the road and have a nice shower. If you come home with me, I can make you a really good meal, and you can take a shower and clean up. You can even wash your clothes if you'd like." Both of us started getting a little worried at this point, and I said, "I really appreciate it, but as I said, we have plans to sleep in the forest tonight." He again said there was no problem, and he would get us there. We drive for a few more minutes, and he picks up his cell phone. This was at the time when cell phones had just gotten common, and he says the following to the person on the other end. "Hi babe, I just picked up 2 hitchhikers, 1 male and 1 female. I'm bringing them over in a few minutes." And then he drives into what to us seemed like a very unsafe area of Nottingham, with police cars and ambulances on several street corners. He parks by an apartment block and again asks us if we want to come in and eat. We say we prefer to wait in the car, and he walks inside. We look at each other with a worried look. "What should we do?" my friend asks. "Should we make a run for it? What about our backpack and our passport?" We keep debating for probably 5 minutes what to do. We had a mace that we were prepared to use if it came to it. And then the man comes back, with juice boxes and 2 big map books. It turns out he was the nicest person ever. A volunteer at the local hospital was a Christian and had done volunteer work in several countries. 45 minutes later, we made it to Sherwood Forest. It was pitch dark. He had no idea where the entrance was, and he kind of reluctantly left us on this small road that we assumed led to the Sherwood Forest. We take our backpacks and start walking. Remember, it is pitch dark, probably around midnight, if not later. We can't see much in front of us, and we just follow this road into the forest. We eventually find a patch of grass and say, "Let's pitch our tent here," and we do that. After the tent is up, we immediately decide to go to bed. We strip down to our underwear and get into our sleeping bags. We talk about how crazy the day was, and we almost fall asleep when we hear a car coming. It stops not too far from us, maybe 100 feet away. We lay there, listening as we heard a car door open. Silence for a bit. And then a man screamed, "Oscar, get the fuck back here, Oscar!" And then a loud sound. Was that a gunshot? We asked ourselves. We hear the car starting up again. The lights are beaming right at our tent. He revs the engine a little, and then we see the car driving straight toward our tent. We freak out, open the tent, and run out and straight for the woods. The car turns and stops to look at the freaks who pitched a tent right in a small roundabout in the middle of the road. The freaks are now running into the woods in their underwear. He drove off, and we decided to pitch our tent somewhere else, in the pitch darkness. The next morning, we woke up and opened the tent to see 30 small school children staring at us from inside a building. It turns out this was some kind of summer camp. One of the people working there came out and offered us a cup of tea, and we sat there laughing at the weird day we had. I went for a solo overnight hike down a local river in North Queensland, Australia. There are houses about 50-75 meters away through the bush on each side, but down quite a slope, so I barely know they are there. This was a few years ago on a cool winter night with loads of stars but no moon, so it was still pretty dark, and I remember just having that feeling of being watched while I made my way down. I got set up under a smallish alcove on the slope where I felt protected from all sides, made myself dinner, and just enjoyed the peaceful atmosphere. That was until about 11:45 p.m., when I started to hear random thuds, snapping twigs, and growling. I was a decent distance away from the water and had a good look around for crocs. Not that they tend to sound like these noises. It's just a North QLD thing. But despite having an array of super bright LED torches and a headlamp, I could not see anything. I eventually fell asleep, but only to be awoken to the sound of this weird guttural groaning, along with more thuds and snapping twigs that seemed to be coming from above the slope all around me. I once again got out of my tent, took a light, and tried to find where it was coming from. Every time I seemed to try getting close, it just shifted a large distance away and was so confusing, which just added to the weirdness. Then suddenly it would just stop, and everything would be silent for a while. It definitely had me spooked, but also kind of irritated because it just didn't make sense, and at times it was so loud that I would sit up in my tent thinking I was about to be eaten by whatever this bush monster was lurking in the darkness. For hours, this grunting and groaning went on, and weirdly, there was even a bad smell. I went through phases of fear, anger, and desperation to just sleep and considered just packing up and leaving there and then. Eventually, the sun came up, however, and I decided it was time to just call it a day and head home. I start packing up, keeping an eye out for any signs of what the heck I had heard, but nothing seems to be moving around. Then, I felt my heart drop. Out of the corner of my eye, around 2 meters away from me, this massive hunting dog had just appeared out of nowhere. I have no idea how this thing managed to evade my seeing it sooner. It was so stealthy. I completely froze, realizing that about 25 meters away in the bush behind me, there were 2 more equally large dogs. Realizing the gravity of what could happen in the situation, I yelled, "Get out of it," and motioned with my hand to leave. They all winced and ran back across the river, up the slope, and into the bush, where I presumed the back of someone's house was. At first, I felt a bit silly for being worried, but then I realized it still could have gone bad fast. Those things were massive, and I saw 3, but there could have even been more lurking around. I wondered if it was them during the night that I heard. Even though it didn't really sound like a dog, I figured it might have explained the thuds and snapping noises. Anyway, I got myself packed up, and just as I was leaving, I saw it. Above the slope on my side of the river, there was a massive herd of cattle. They even started making some of the noises I was hearing. I had a good laugh at myself for that, and I felt some relief. Heading back to my car, though, meant walking up the river, of which a significant part is river sand. This is fine, but it makes moving more than walking pace virtually impossible. After about an hour of this, I sit down to take a breather and grab a drink. I look forward and see a pair of eyes staring at me through the scrub across the river. The dogs are all crouched down, concealing themselves, but their eyes are locked on me. This is when I really started to feel like I was in danger, so I kept my knife in my hand just in case. These dogs had been following me for the last hour, and God knows how long before that. They continued to follow me just beyond the tree line all the way up until I got back to the road where my car was. A few times I yelled, like earlier, and they would retreat into the bush, but they would soon come back, eyes locked on me, sneaking along. When I saw my car was about a meter or 2 away, I hit the unlock button. The sound must have set them off because then one of them sprinted at me, followed by the others. I threw my bag in the back seat and slammed the back door, which made them stop dead in the sand, now in a more aggressive stance. I wasted no time and jumped in the driver's seat, started my car, and peeled out of there as fast as I could. To this day, I have no idea if those dogs were stalking me the day before, were around my tent during the night, or if all the noise I heard was just the cattle. But I definitely felt like they were going in for the kill when I was heading back to my car. It was easily the creepiest experience, and I've only been back to that area once since, and it was with another person, despite this being a frequent favorite spot of mine prior. It definitely makes me second guess any noise I hear at night out in the bush now.